Hey there, YouTubers. Right. So I get a lot of questions from folks, hey, how are you able to get nearly 400 FPS? Or some of the videos I have hit 400 FPS for an average for these videos that I make that are, anywhere from 12 to 20 some minutes long. Sometimes I'll do back-to-back games and, we'll have a little better idea of what the actual average is, because just doing one game doesn't always show you what that real average is. Sometimes it takes a few, and taking those, and averaging them out gives you a little better idea, because there will be days, that the FPS is much lower, and then there's some days where it's even higher, and like, wow, what caused that? So these two examples here, I believe these were both with i7 10700Ks. You see that I had one where we got 384 FPS and the other 391. And this is about 18 minutes into this game, so it's pretty much flatlined. Towards the end, yeah, there'll be some pretty tough action and it'll dip off, but that's, for the most part what it is. Now, let's talk about the gear that was actually in this computer, and not necessarily my best gear. So, hardware-wise, it was the i7 10700K, Gigabyte RTX 2070 Super. We'll take a look at that. Skype Ninja 5 CPU air cooler, 512 gig Samsung PM981 M.2 NVMe, EVGA 850 BQ, so it's 850 watt power supply. Patriot 4133 megahertz RAM, DDR4, 16 gigs, so two 8 gig sticks of that. And then we'll actually talk about the different settings and everything. So this video is probably going to take a while to do. I'll apologize if it drags out, but to tell you the whole story, we kind of got to cover everything, right? Let's look at my Fortnite settings. So full screen, from what I understand, that's important. And you can kind of read what it says over here. Full screen mode, you can interact with other windows as easily, but the game will run slightly faster. So if you're using one of those other ones, it might, cause you some issues. Resolution, obviously 1080p low. And then, I set this to unlimited, obviously, so you can see how ridiculously high it can get. If I, was playing by myself on my 144 hertz monitor, and I didn't care to make a video, I would probably drop this down right to this. Okay, so that's that. Now, don't do anything here. Quality presets, obviously low or off through this whole area. Now down here, VSync is off, motion blur is on. Show FPS, I don't need that on because I'm using MSI Afterburner. DirectX. Now this is, kind of questionable whether I'm getting any better performance or not, but I am doing DirectX 12, and videos you haven't seen yet, I will turn the ray tracing on with that. Allow multi-threaded rendering, I leave that on, and use GPU crash debugging off. And this, since we're not doing DX12, or we are doing DX12, but this, probably will affect performance. I've got that off. So those are my settings inside Fortnite. Now let me get my little cheat sheet back up so we can keep this going. All right, so let's talk about some of the easy things. Wi-Fi versus Ethernet. Now I am completely plugged in here at the house in Virginia. It wasn't always that way. Some of these videos were made in Hawaii, so Hawaii, I did have Ethernet going. I did have Wi-Fi, and there were some where I was in a hotel. Now, best results obviously going to be on Ethernet. Worst results were on Wi-Fi, and the worst results were Wi-Fi in a hotel. Okay, so I would see instances where my guy, I was running, and then next thing you know, he would disappear and drop back in. Several frames behind where he was. What did that do to my FPS? I never bothered to go back and look, But you know, those videos, they don't turn out so great, right? Um, so another thing in here, I am, you know, for the most part trying to use a video capture card. Let's see if you guys can see this cheap one here. This is the Lenovo video capture card I have on the channel. I have tried several ridiculously expensive ones, including the Elgato. Awesome results, except for it died within a week. So was not too happy about that. And we tried, what is it, AverMedia. You know, I've tried about 5 capture cards. There's another one around here somewhere, and I've got another one on order. But yeah, so I'm going to keep bringing, you know, those to the channel. But recording on a secondary computer is obviously going to give you better results for capturing this stuff. So if you're sitting at home and, you know, you're recording these games, and then at the end you see mine, you're like, wow, that guy's killing what I'm getting. Are you, you know, using the GeForce Experience, you know, Shadow Play, or using Radeon Live, or using OBS? OBS is just the absolute killer of your FPS, especially if it's on the same computer you're playing on. Now, secondary computer, which, you know, that's what I've got going on here, right? So you can see me, there's OBS, there is, you know, what I've got going on. So this is not the computer we're playing the game on. The computer I'm playing the game on is over here, sitting on the test box, all right? So that, you know, has a huge effect on your FPS if it's OBS. Now, Shadow Play, I don't really notice it as much. And I try and let you guys know in the title that I've used Shadow Play, or used Radeon Live, or I've used the Xbox Game Bar. So you can kind of go, okay, that's, you know, pretty good numbers. They could be slightly higher. So there is that aspect. All right. Hard drives. So, you know, I never play these games on a hard drive, okay? They're, you know, not only slow to load, but they're just terrible. I like my operating system and my game on the same M.2 NVMe, all right, solid state drive. And, you know, I can't afford the most expensive drives in the world, so I don't have the Samsung EVO 970 or the Sprint Rocket, the PCI Express 4.01, which is $200 for you know, the terabyte. But I do have some expensive ones. I mean, not the ridiculous expensive, but I do have expensive ones. So my preferred drive is probably my Samsung EVO 960 Pro. You know, maybe the 970 Plus. I do have 970. I've got the Samsung PM 981, which pretty much gives it the same performance. EVO 960, PM 961, and then somewhere in here I've got 2 Sprint Rocket ones. The whatever it is, Rocket Q, which is the slower one, and then the other one that's below, the really fast one. So those are, you know, really good drives. Not quite as good as my Samsungs, I believe, but you know, you can argue that point, and you may be right. All right, so let's take a look at the video card. And you know, not all video cards are the same, right? So there's obviously differences between them spec-wise. And so, you know, pretty sure this is my graphics card here, okay? This is the one that gets me these great FPS averages. This is an RTX 2070 Super, Gigabyte, WindForce, all right, OC. Now, do I overclock this? No, I do not. So you can only imagine I might get some higher scores. I'm not a big overclocker of graphics cards. I killed one many years ago, and you know, that has kind of held me back. So though you will see that I've messed around a little bit with some of the AMD ones, I have not messed with my baby there. And honestly, soon, very soon, that graphics card is not going to be mine. I'm going to be handing it over to my son. But, you know, who knows when that'll happen, because I didn't get my RTX 3080. So we'll see. I may just be stuck using the Zotac RTX 2060 Super. And whining about it because my FPS average isn't as high. So let's see. You know, with the graphics card, always make sure you have the most up-to-date drivers. You'll get that message inside of Fortnite that says, you know, they have issues with the version that you have. So try and keep that up to date. And, you know, RAM speed. So in my best videos, folks, I am using this RAM right here. And to be honest with you, it's not even on my compatibility list for either one of my drives. Now, maybe it is now, but when I bought it, I actually got this for $89.99. Okay, and this stuff has made a difference. You know, when you jump up from 2666 to this, now I've got what do I got? 2133, 2400, 2666, 3000, 3200, 3600, and then this 4133. Of course, with those, I can, you know, make pretty much every RAM speed below 4133 to 2666. So we can, you know, change all that up by using the BIOS. So yeah, this stuff does it does make a difference. You know, you see a lot of articles say, oh, AMD, it really, you know, high-speed RAM really helps AMD more than it does Intel. And I will say I think it's more based on the game. One of the Tomb Raider games, I barely saw much of an increase in the FPS, but I do believe here in Fortnite that it does help me. And really, if you look at it, you know, if it's 1%, 1%, you know, of 300 something is another, you know, three and a half frames. So, but I honestly believe it may be higher than that in Fortnite. So, all right. What else, folks? We talked RAM speed. We talked settings. Let's talk about CPU. So, you know, those of you out there that love your AMD and those of you that are on this channel, because, you know, I am one of those Intel fans. I'm not going to call myself an Intel fanboy, but I am an Intel fan. And at least for Fortnite and pretty much everything I do, Intel is the way to go. Now we do have the Ryzen 9 3900X here, and it's sitting over there in the corner, folks. Yeah, I'm actually not too happy with the X570 motherboard that it has. It's given me, you know, troubles. But why do I bring up Ryzen? So, you know, these single core scores, if you're a user benchmark user, these really seem to have a big effect on how well Fortnite plays, okay? You won't see these high scores on your Ryzen's, but you will see them on something like the i7 10700K, the i9 10900 or 10900K. So, you know, ridiculously high. Now, if I ever go buy one of those, will I have higher FPS? I'm betting that I will. And if we throw the good old 3900X in here, oops, wrong one. The one that I own, you'll see that single core score is much lower. So I do believe, you know, that has a huge effect on how well Fortnite plays. So, talked about CPU. Now, do I overclock the CPU? Sometimes, and you will see it in the title. I have had mixed results with overclocking CPUs for Fortnite. What I have noticed is, though it'll spit out this huge single core score, it hasn't really created much of a FPS increase. Now, it does make a huge difference in my Cinebench score, and it has made a huge difference in 4K editing. And then, you know, I haven't tested enough. I would think that something like Doom Eternal, which does seem to appreciate a multi-core score, that it might improve there. And that's possibly one of those games that the Ryzen 9 may be better at than my i7, but I have yet to sit down to compare those two to find out. So, all right, we talked CPU, single core score, CPU coolers. Now, I I showed you earlier that I had a Scythe Ninja 5, Scythe Ninja 5, yeah, on there. And we damaged that slightly coming back from Hawaii. That's what happens when you don't put it back in the original box and you throw it in your suitcase and wrap it and close. And somebody drops it. Probably multiple times, I'm sure. They the airlines dropped it. But my thing with CPU coolers is I like the big ones. So I'm an air cool guy. You probably are not going to see water cooling on here for a long time, but this is an Noctua, dual tower, dual fan. All right. This is what's currently on the i7 10700K. The other one was the i9 that I have. And this guy here, folks, is seems almost as capable as that big one behind me. Now, I showed you the big one. My preference, would be something like this. Looks a little sleeker. It's the same model as the one I just showed you, but these get the job done. And why do I bring that up? Well, one thing that people should be monitoring, if you don't have this installed, put Intel's Extreme Tuning Utility on your computer, and just monitor whether you're hitting thermal throttling. All right, so that can affect your performance, and you do not want that. So if you're having problems and you see this is hitting yes, pretty much could tell you that you need a better cooler. All right, moving on. I think we talked about everything I want to talk about in the CPU cooler world. Oh, and your thermal paste. I don't really talk about this, but don't buy that cheap Chinese crap like I did. I'm gonna grab it. I haven't done a video comparing these. I think enough people have, but this stuff is garbage that I bought here, and I used it for quite a while. But it's almost watery, and you want to make sure you got good thermal paste on your CPU coolers. Most of you, I think, that are watching this, will tell me, your speeds are good, blah, blah, blah. And I'm probably not helping any of you, but hey, you asked. This is what my setup is and my philosophy, all right? Power supply. Okay, so, I think one of the big channels was talking about how much, power you really need. I didn't watch that video because I really didn't have time. And honestly, I should watch those channels because I might learn something. But so here is what I'm using, folks, in most of my videos. It's this EVGA 850 BQ, all right, semi-modular. I have two of them. And then I also have, I have an Apivia 900 watt, 900 watt semi-modular. And I don't recommend Apivia, but I do use that one quite a bit because not necessarily because of the power, but I just like semi-modular. On a smaller build, I would use something like my, I think it's a Corsair 430 watt semi-modular, just because I don't like all those extra SATA cables. I don't use SATA too often, so why have it in there, right? All right. Why am I talking about power supplies and rambling on? So another thing that can really affect your performance is, power limit throttling. And you want to make sure you have enough power, okay? So hopefully you did your power calculations. And honestly, when you don't have enough power because your computer is going to reboot on you. If it's rebooting, most likely it is related to a power supply problem, especially if you see, some issues in here, right? So two things that really can affect performance that Intel Extreme Tuning Utility will tell you: thermal throttling and power limit throttling. Now, I go, overkill on PSU. So I think the recommended PSU for what I have is, I don't know, 550, 600, 650, somewhere in there. I'm at 850. Now, why do I do that? Just in case, right? I'm thinking of the future. So I always look at the future state, and this cord is not going to be long enough, I don't think. Dang it. Or we have stuff tangled. We have stuff tangled. Can you see? You can see a huge mess on my desk. So this is the other difference between the good channels and mine. I can't afford anybody to clean up after me. All right, so you'll see I am rocking currently now that I'm home. I have the 1x8 and the 1x4, okay? As I've shown in one of my videos, this does draw more power, all right? So is that going to help me with overclocking? It may just do that, all right? So um, now, have I tested that out in any of my videos since I've been back? No, I have not. You know, maybe we will break our all-time score there, but I do try and go overkill on PSU, and honestly, I would tell you whatever you calculate on the PSU calculator, just add 100 watts to it. You know, the price difference usually isn't that bad between power supplies. That $100, or excuse me, that 100 watts, the amount of money it's going to cost you is probably not going to kill you. Okay. Now, other things I do, um, if I can bring it up. No, it's not. A lot of times in my videos will set power limits to unlimited. Um, I just started doing that with 10th gen, and I haven't had any problems with it yet. Now, originally I was scared, worried that I was going to do something destructive to my computer, but we have not had problems. Now, what this does is help your benchmark scores as well. It is not uncommon for me to have some of the higher Cinebench scores that you'll see. It's not uncommon for my CPUs to end up there in the high percentile for CPU user benchmark. So, all these things kind of add up, right? If you're doing everything right, maybe some of these things I'm doing wrong, but let's say I'm doing everything right, it is helping increase, my gameplay and my FPS average. Now, motherboard wise, of course, Z490, folks. That's all I'm going to say. Go with the Z490. The example here is an i7 10700K. I would use that for my i7 10700. It is worth the money over a B460, H470, H410. Now, there are some issues with these cheaper motherboards that I buy. Stuff that I'm not necessarily an expert in, but you read the reviews and you hear a lot of negatives about VRMs and all that stuff. But for the most part, even the cheapest Z490 is probably going to be a lot better than the best H470 or best B460. H410s are just garbage in my opinion, just like the H310 before it. Now, so if I had an i5 10600 or a i5 10600K, I would use a Z490. I built War Mother's gaming rig, and guess what? She's got an i5 10400. She has a Z490M in there. So, and hers is rocking a lot better than somebody on a B460 would, mainly because of the RAM speed. All right. So on this channel we've had 4 Z490s. I'm getting another one in soon, and they've all been between $119 and $200 at the time I purchased them. Now I believe every one of them is at least $150 to $200. So there you go. I don't know if this helped any out. This was a 24-minute video listening to me, my vlog. But, honestly, if you follow everything I'm doing and you're not getting 400, it's probably your style of gameplay, because there's really no other reason. I don't think I have an anomaly in here where my graphics card is that much better, or I got the two best i7s, i7 10700K and the i7 10700 that are just outperforming all the other ones. So thanks for checking out the video. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.